welcome to Making Business Personal. Here we have Rick Ferrari. Hey, Rick.
Hey man, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So listen, I've only started off this way one other time. I'm going to start off with you this way too. How do you grow up with the name Rick Ferrari? Like, what's the pressure? What is it like? How do you handle it?
Um, Kids are mean no matter what. Kids find a way to tease you, and it's fucked. I don't know if you remember there was a TV show called Taxi
Of course.
back in the 80s.
Yeah.
So Latka, Andy Kaufman, he had a character named Vic Ferrari. It was his alter ego that was this sort of Vegas lounge singer type guy. So uh, you know, people, I think that was just like right after high school when I was done. People would tease me about that, but yeah, people always found a way to tease me.
I just feel
Uh,
like with the name Rick Ferrari, you're either
yeah.
destined for fame or destined for like the back page of the newspaper, you know?
Yeah, like porn, exactly.
Well, either that
Exactly.
or, uh,
Yeah.
today Rick Ferrari found with
Yeah, like a crimes person or something criminal. I used to be Richard Ferrari. I grew up as Richard Ferrari, and then, well, actually, I was first Ricky Ferrari.
ooh, Ricky Ferrari.
Yeah, Ricky.
Ricky Ferrari was a teen idol. They tried to make you a teen idol as Ricky Ferrari. Either
Did
that
that?
or you were going to be the first star of Silver Spoons.
That's hilarious. Oh God.
Now, and
Yeah.
that is your real name. Ferrari is your last name. So when you were
Yes.
little, were
Yeah.
you were you really hoping you were related to the Ferrari family, the car company?
Actually, funny story. If you look at my past in the 80s, so I used to go to Studio 54, and when I was around 16 years old, God, I used to be so ashamed of this story, but I'm not ashamed of it anymore.
This
Um,
may be the first episode, by the way, that I had to put a parental warning on.
Maybe. Uh, a friend of mine was throwing a party, a private party at Studio 54 called Studio 54's Second Generation. And it was a party celebrating the offspring of very famous people, famous families. And so she asked me to be a part of it. She asked me to be a part of the second generation party. And I was like 16. I was like, sure. You know, when you're 16, you don't really, you don't really think things through. You're like, oh, yay, I'll be part of a party. So, so after the invitations were being printed and everything was happening and everything was sort of rolling, and we were already starting to book photo shoots with press like Vanity Fair, People Magazine, Interview Magazine. They're doing our portraits. She's like, how are you related to the Ferrari car family? So, from a very young age, I was a really good storyteller. So I just said that, my grandfather was the brother of Enzo Ferrari, and that's all I needed to say. And, but little did I know that that was going to explode and that I was going to be front and center, even though there was people like Ben Stiller and his sister Amy were part of it. And, let's see who else, Francisco Quinn, who was Anthony Quinn's son. There was wonderful, it was an incredible group of people, Karina Hoffman, who was Dustin Hoffman's adopted daughter. And, uh, and it was anyway, it was a really incredible elite group of kids from New York that were all related to very famous composers and writers and Broadway producers and all sorts of incredible people. And somehow people were most fascinated by me because people didn't know a lot about the Ferrari car family. So I became, sort of the, the crown jewel of all of these kids. And I wanted to blend into the background, and that did not happen. It was the opposite. So, I started attracting a lot of press, and I started, showing up, on the social pages of the newspapers every time I went out. And so I started collecting all the clippings, and I started, making a scrapbook of myself. You know, Rick Ferrari, the
Scion, the
Scion,
scion of
the
the
Scion of the
Ferrari.
Ferrari family. Yeah. And unfortunately, I had to involve my mom because my mom was a club person too. She went out a lot. So all of a sudden, she was the ex-wife of the Ferrari family. And, but then she utilized it to do some good things. All of a sudden, she was asked by Anne Eisenhower, who was the granddaughter of President Eisenhower. She was asked to start doing charities for children of South America. And so there was the real granddaughter of President Eisenhower, and Rena Ferrari of the automobile family, making invitations to Regine's and the Studio 54. And there they are, like, in all of the social columns of, the New York Times and New York Post and Daily News, Cindy Adams and whatnot, Liz Smith column. And we collected all the newspaper articles.
How did you get out of this? Like, this is a deep hole. How
Oh, it
did you
is a
get out
deep
of
hole.
this?
It's a wonderful, I moved to LA in 89. And when I moved to LA, I moved here uh, as very good friends with David Geffen. And I was smart enough, even though I knew David in New York, I never told David that story. I never introduced that story to David. So David never knew that I marketed myself that way. He never saw any of that. He just knew me as Rick Ferrari because I knew he would be like, bullshit. You're not that guy. And so when I moved to LA in 89, I retired the lie completely. I just started over. I never looked back. So there was people that came from New York that knew me that way, but it never really came up. Or if they brought it up, I just never talked about it. I never continued the press. I never talked about it ever again. I just sort of retired the lie. And then in the 90s, and since I was living in LA, it was a different experience. I just moved away from the 80s New York club scene. So, it didn't follow me here.
That's an interesting phrase. I retired the lie. Uh,
Yeah.
it's amazing how many professionals. It doesn't matter what you do. You could be someone in a C-suite of a Fortune 500 company. You could be a college football coach. There's a lie somewhere. There's a lie somewhere that got you into. Not everybody. There are some clean people out there. I haven't met any, but there are some. And but there's a lie. And what happens is most people 20 years later will tell that lie because it's kind of become part of their fabric. And eventually it will bite you. Like, people, at some point, you're going to be in the public eye so much that someone's going to dig and they're going to say, wait a second, you didn't go to that school, or you never held that job, or you didn't have that rank in the military. So the idea of you were young and stupid at 16.
Yeah.
You took advantage of something that, are you kidding me? I would have done that in a heartbeat, and I would not have retired the lie. Like, I would be, right now, I would have been like a test driver, like all this crap. And and then you did it for what it was worth, but I'm sure it carried a heavy burden because, like, what if someone finds out? Like, what if blah blah blah? And so you moved cross country when there was time when there was no social media. It's like people didn't blah, and you said, "Listen, I'm just never going to say that again," and you got away with it until now because people are going to hear this.
Yeah.
And they're gonna come after you. It always seems like you're the inspiration for 6 Degrees of Separation.
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that I've had a lot of years to sort of process it, and I mean, I think if someone from my past wants to come back to me and say, "Hey, man, like, why did you lie to me, or why did you tell me that?" and I'll say to them, status was a very important thing in New York City in the 80s. And I wanted to be noticed, and I wanted to be taken seriously, and I wanted my one up. I wanted my edge. And it helped me to create a career as a model agent. It helped me to create a name for myself. And I made good for myself. I was a high school dropout. half Italian, half Puerto Rican, mostly Puerto Rican because I grew up with my mom and not my dad. So I kind of was more on the Puerto Rican side, and nobody wanted, a high school dropout Puerto Rican kid that was gay. And I
There
did,
wasn't a big demand for that?
no, there wasn't a big demand for that. Sorry,
Shocking.
there wasn't. And yeah, people are going to hear this, but like I still have on my social media, I put up things, old articles of me from People magazine where they call me, Rick Ferrari, grand nephew of Enzo Ferrari and all that. And it's just part of my life. It's part of my fabric. And I listened to the song Freedom 90 by George Michael, and there's a line in there that says, all we have to do now is take these lies and make them true somehow. And
No, Rick, you got to sing it. You can't dictate
all
a
we have
lyric.
to do now is
There it is.
take these lies and make them true somehow.
That's how you do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll grab my guitar. We'll rock this out.
Yeah. So I mean, and what that means to me is that I've made that young man that was from something, and I made him into something. I made him into a grown-up man with posterity that may as well have been from the Ferrari car family, because I made him into a respectable person that can hold his head up high and, and has a greatness to him.
There's so much to unpack in this story. I mean, we could do the whole episode on this story. Just side note, wouldn't it be hysterical if that TV show Finding Your Roots, if you were on it and you actually were related to the Ferrari family, think that would be hysterical. But I kind of want to make that happen. But
no,
a lie,
yeah,
in some ways, it's a product of the human imagination. Who's to say what is real and what's not real? I mean, yes, 2 + 2 = 4. That's a fact. It never equals 3.9. It never equals 4.1. It's a fact, right? You are most likely not related to Enzo Ferrari, most likely, right? But the stories that we tell ourselves fuel us. Sometimes they push us forward. Sometimes they hold us back, right? You've got your empowering stories. You got your resourceful stories. And then you've got your stories that hold you back. They say, no, I could never do that. But for some reason, we denigrate people when they make something up or when they pretend. But if an actor pretends, we'll pay them $20 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, I wrote an article about 3 months ago. Maybe it was 2 months ago. I don't remember. But when the Signal chat group that Pete Hegseth was on, and all those things got out, and like 2 days later, Pfizer got hacked. And they said they didn't, right? Now, these are intelligent people. You could say what you want. If you could disagree with somebody politically or whatever, but you don't get to where you are at that level as being stupid. You are intelligent. And there were a lot of intelligent people on that Signal group who all lied. They all said, no, we didn't do it. Knowing full well the facts will come out. Same with the people at Pfizer. I think right now in society, there's this cancel culture of, if you ever make a mistake, you're done. Yeah. You're done. I'm sorry, you're done. You're not perfect, so you're done. Your reply that you've created, that if someone ever confronts you, I think is beautiful. Listen, I was 16, 17, 18 years old. It was New York. I saw these things. Status was important. I wanted to be liked. I wanted to be important. And so I did it. And you own it. You own why you did it. No excuse, explanation. Yeah. I love that. And I really wish people would be more empowered to do that today, all the time. Yes, I made that mistake. Here's why I chose to do that. Here's why I denied it. Here's why I did this, because I was insecure.
Right. Exactly. I was insecure. I was young and dumb, and I subscribed to different beliefs that I no longer have. So since I'm not that person anymore, it's really easy for me to be transparent.
Yeah.
I mean, if I was the same person, there's no way I would be able to disclose it. You know what I mean?
Well, you subscribed to different beliefs then that you no longer hold. That's not an easy thing to do. the majority of people die with the beliefs they were given when they were 5 years old.
That's right.
They
Yeah.
were given these beliefs. Here's what's true. Here's what's not true. Here's what you
Right.
stand for. Here's what you don't stand for. Here's what's good. Here's what's bad. Coke, not
That's right.
Pepsi. Sprite, not 7
Right.
Up. Right.
That's right. Exactly.
And which I think is true. But so how did you do that? How did you manage to, one, identify that those were beliefs, not facts?
Right.
And then two, how'd you change them? How were you able to do that?
I think it was through a process of self-discovery. I mean, it really was a process of discovering who I was, what I believed in, um, and and that was just that was a lifelong process, a lifelong process of forgiving myself and finding love for myself, and kind of it starts to get into all this existential stuff and all this stuff about spiritual and metaphysical stuff, but it boils down to me just looking at it without judgment and saying that's just part of, like, who I was, like where I went to high school, and where I grew up, and choices I made, and career choices I made, and people I dated and people I fell in love with, lies I told.
Yeah. How did you go about forgiving yourself? What did you have to do that?
You have to look back at yourself and separate the child from the adult, and look at the child and look at the limited information that child had. And since that child had limited information, that child had to make choices with that limited information. And you have to be objective about that and say, wow, that child was working with very limited information and was desperate and wanted to do some good things. And, this is what they thought was the right thing to do. So, I never can look at a part of my life and say I wanted to harm someone. So, that part I'm really proud of. I
That's a
harmed
power.
myself a lot. I harmed myself a lot with
Okay, so then you
drugs
got to
and things
include
like
that.
that.
I mean,
Yeah.
you're the most important person in the world.
Uh-huh. For me,
That's-
yeah, I am.
Yeah, and you need to be.
Yeah.
It's such a strong thing to be able to look back and say, hey, that person who I still am, but who I was back then with the limited information I had, that wasn't a bad person. That wasn't a dumb person. That was that person. And if I were in that situation now with what I know now, I probably wouldn't have made that choice.
Right.
That's
Mhm.
why people who tell me I have no regrets, I'm like, really? Because like most of my regrets have nothing to do with actions I've taken. Like I've been in bad accidents. I've done stupid things, right?
Right.
But my regrets are things I've said to people.
Me too. Me too.
Never
me too,
should
me
have
too.
said that
Yeah.
to that person. That person did not
Yeah.
deserve it,
Yeah.
no matter
Yeah.
what.
Right. Injuring people by accident. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well,
Injuring
sometimes on
people.
purpose. Sometimes
Well,
on
yeah,
purpose.
yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
I'll own that. I definitely will own that. Um, you're right. Impulsive decisions that hurt other people on purpose are definitely part of my history. So I have to make that caveat about what I said earlier about it, not harming people. I did. I did make choices to harm people on the spot impulsively, and I would change that in a heartbeat. I really
Yeah.
would change that in a heartbeat. I'm very good at holding my tongue now. I'm very good at it. I wasn't for many years, and now I am, and I'm proud of myself for that.
It's, I find that a quip or throwing my belief or my thought in a moment, in an argument, in a group, it's not going to change the world. And so holding it in is sometimes the most valiant and brave thing a person can do.
Oh yeah.
For my 50th birthday, Grace sent out requests for people to write things for me, a memory of me.
Oh, wow.
a time, a this, or that, right? How she found some of these people, I don't know how she did, and she won't tell me because there's people I'm like, how do you even know I know that person? Like I haven't spoken to that person 30 years. Like Grace was like 2 last time I
Right, right,
spoke to that
right.
person, right?
Wow, wow. Yeah.
So some of the things, and I'm going to say 50%, Rick, 50% of the things that people said, these were like pivotal moments. I have no recollection of.
Wow. Yeah.
Things that people said I said, things, actions I did, no recollection. So you never know what another person is going to remember as a benchmark moment of their life.
It's true. I agree. I've had people come back to me and tell me that something I said changed their life and they repeat it and I genuinely don't remember it. I sometimes I pretend as if I do,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
but yes, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
That is definitely, yeah.
And what if it's something negative? Like what if you said to someone when they were a kid,
Yeah.
um, only little girls cry. Stop being such a baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
suddenly
Something
that
like
person
that.
is
Yeah.
repressed for the rest of their life because they looked up to you.
I know. I know. I know.
And you have
It's a
no
trip.
recollection of ever saying it,
Yeah.
you know?
It's a trip. No,
Yeah.
it's a huge responsibility, but we have to just move forward and do the best we can from this moment on. We
Yeah.
can't look back. We have to just really try our
So
best.
so
Yeah.
you talk about the 80s and
Yeah.
it's funny because listen, you're all listening to this, but there'll be a picture of Rick like when I, advertise this. Rick and I look the same age. He actually looks a little younger than I do. And so
Oh,
he talks
stop.
about like when he was Studio 64 in the 80s and I'm like, get the hell out of here, Studio 54 in the 80s. Like I went to Studio 54 when it was the Kit Kat Club because
Mm.
they did the revival of uh oh come on, what's that musical that it's of Cabaret there. Like
Cabaret.
yeah,
Right. Right. Right.
that
Exactly.
was
Yeah. With Alan Cumming.
1997. Yeah,
With Alan,
1997.
was it
And
Alan
Natasha
Cumming?
Richardson. Yeah,
Yeah.
Alan Cumming and Natasha Richardson. May she rest in
Right.
peace.
Right. Right. Yes.
And then a crane fell on it and they had to move it. But
Oh God.
um so you moved out to LA
Yeah.
in 88 or 89?
89, September of 89. Yeah.
And what was the goal?
The goal was, okay, I'm done with New York. I was born and raised here and I want to live somewhere else. And I was 24 years old and I knew LA because I had spent a lot of time here with my mom and I had come out here a lot. I had a lot of friends out here and I knew the city rather well. And it was the obvious next place for me to live. So and I knew David Geffen really well, and I knew that I wanted to continue to pursue being in the entertainment industry somehow. So I came out here, and
And you just drove cross country with like a suitcase in your
I
hand?
drove across country in a Chevette that I got at a police auction for a little over $200, and I had only gotten my driver's license like 2 weeks earlier at in Connecticut because it was easy to do your driving test in Connecticut because it's so suburban. And I drove across country with a friend of mine that was wanted in 5 states for credit card fraud. And he was running from the law, so he came with me in the Chevette. And I practiced driving in the rural states, and he drove through the urban parts because I was intimidated because I was a new driver. And we stopped in places like Graceland and uh, the Grand Canyon. Yeah, and yeah, and we got here and we began our life in LA. Yeah,
Did you have a place to stay? What'd you do?
I did. I landed. An ex-boyfriend of mine had room for me to stay, so we landed with him in Mid Wilshire section, and I started there.
Okay.
I
And what'd
started
you
there.
do? Like
Yeah.
how'd you
Uh,
get your feet on the ground? What'd you do?
I started doing extra work. I started doing extra work because that's what he was doing, and I started doing what do they call that? Like market research. Where you do these groups where
Oh
they
yeah, the
they ask.
panels, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So they would pay you like $100 to go in and ask your opinion about things and this and that. So it was just a way to sort of make money and yeah. So this and that,
This and that. Yeah, I
this
know.
and
This
that.
and that.
I did this and that.
This and that
And
is
then,
like it's
and
like
I,
racketeering, you know,
yeah,
it
no, I
encompasses a
know.
lot of
It was
things.
funny. Well, cause yeah, I mean, I knew Alan Carr, the producer of Grease.
Yeah.
And yeah, so he got me this featured extra role on this new TV series that it was based on the movie The Outsiders. You know, the movie The
I
Outsiders.
know the
It was,
movie and the
yeah.
book.
So,
What was the
okay.
TV
So
show?
they did a TV show on Fox. It only ran for one season. You can look it up. It was called The Outsiders. It was exactly like the movie. And
Huh.
I was one of the featured greasers. I was a greaser. So they dressed me in that's where I fell in love with wearing Chucks all the time. I would be in my Chucks and I would be in my t-shirt and my hair would be done like a greaser and I would be part of the greaser gang. And, yeah, we did it for a whole season. So I was a featured extra. I always had to be on set, you know, um, playing with those guys. I made some good friends on that
Who
show.
was in that? Who played the
Uh,
characters?
oh God, you're testing my memory now, but it was like I know David Arquette was in it, and I became friends with the Arquettes because of it.
Really?
And Rodney Harvey was in it, and I think Rodney Harvey played Pony Boy. God, I can't remember. Shit. Robert Russler. Robert Russler played the role that Matt Dillon played.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right, I gotta look this up on
Yeah.
IMDb. This
But
is
yeah.
crazy.
But Rodney Harvey played Pony Boy, and Robert Russler played the Matt Dillon role. And gosh, I can't remember the rest. It would come to me, but um, yeah, I made some good friends on that show. Um,
And you were what,
Other extras.
25? 25,
Yeah, I was
26?
25. I was 25, and I soon after that, I found I fell in love and I found a boyfriend that was incredible at photography. So we started shooting pictures and we became a photography team and we started testing for the modeling agencies, but we did paid tests. So we charged for incredible photo shoots and we started shooting celebrities from that because the photography that we were doing was really, really good. And so I was sort of art directing and styling, and he was actually the actual photographer shooting, but we were a team. And we shot for a couple of years and made some really good money doing it. And then from there, I got a job at Mary Webb Davis as director of Mary Webb Davis, the modeling agency. I revamped them and I called them Web Models and put them back on the map for a year. And then from there, I went to a very, very prestigious modeling agency called Prima Models, and I got recruited to do the men's division for the first year. And there's a very interesting and long story about how I got promoted to become the director of the entire agency. So I went from just being the head of the men's division to the director of the entire agency because of some strategic thing I did that is a very long and involved story, but it's an interesting one. Um, yeah, so from there, I continued my career and, my career blossomed. So,
So
yeah,
so you come out to LA. You
yeah,
know you like the entertainment business. You're
yeah,
friends with one of those powerful producers in the history of Hollywood.
yes,
Um, but it doesn't sound like you tried to leverage that. It sounded like you were just friends, and it wasn't
yeah.
like, yeah. Um, but I'm sure he'd give you a good reference. And
Oh, I mean, that's interesting that you brought that up because during this same time that I'm doing all this stuff that I just mentioned, David is having me over to his house in Malibu, where he was primarily living, for dinner parties. He loved having me over his fancy dinner parties where he would invite heads of state and A-list celebrities and legends. We're talking about like legendary people that, you know, it you may as well be saying I had Santa Claus and Dracula over for dinner because the names are ridiculous. But he loved having me over for dinner because of my honesty. because of the way I spoke at these dinner parties. Even though I was 25 years old, I could hold conversations about politics, about religion, about, existentialism, about love, about charity, about, fashion and beauty. And, these conversations would get really sort of all over the place and, pseudo intellectual or just silly. Sometimes, we would just get stoned on pot and have really fun conversations with huge legends, or people that were just incredibly interesting. And so I was pretty much a staple at his dinner parties. And, opportunities came up during those dinners, but I still had my career. And what what really made him respect me is the fact that I wasn't going to him for favors. I wasn't going to him for job opportunities. I didn't need that from him. And oftentimes I felt, in retrospect, I looked like maybe there were times where he could have tested me, maybe to see if I was going to take the bait. And like, I didn't need anything from him. I didn't need him to advance my career or for him to, you know, uh, but he did teach me the ropes. Him, Barry Diller, who I loved very much. I was on a date with Barry Diller the night that I zero. They call it zero positive converted. I zero positive converted the night that I became very ill from becoming positive with HIV. Um, uh, I was on a date with Barry Diller, and Barry rushed me to the emergency room at Cedars-Sinai, and they looked and they saw my my emergency contact was David Geffen, and they saw that Barry Diller was bringing me in for an emergency, so they didn't even bother to take my insurance information. I'll never
Did they
forget
did
that.
they take you
That
to
was
the
really
David Geffen wing of
they
the
just
hospital?
there wasn't a David Geffen wing at the time. No, there
Okay.
wasn't yet. But anyway, they took me in, and I was in the hospital for like a day or two, and then I went home and was sick for about 3 weeks.
Jeez.
And I remember saying, David was like, he's like, did they tell you you have cytomegalic virus? Did he tell you have cytomegalic? I said, yes, they told me. He goes, I knew it. David was the kind of Jew uh, that loves to diagnose, diseases. He loves to be the one to diagnose a disease before the doctor does. He's like, I knew you had cytomegalic virus. I knew it. I said it before the doctor did. You had cytomegalic virus. I was like, yes, you were right. I did. I had cytomegalic. So, but I was sick for about 3 weeks, and David was so lovely. Before that, when I tested positive, he was one of the first people I told, and he had me over for dinner alone. He used to have this uh uh, major domo kind of guy that was his gentleman's gentleman, whose name was also David. It made it kind of strange because they were both named David. But David made me an incredible dinner and made us both an incredible dinner. And Geffen was really stoic about it and really calm and collected. He was like, listen, we're just gonna, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna have you tested again. And he called up the skin doctor, Arnold Klein, who's like the skin doctor to the stars. And he said, Arnie, my friend Rick, he just got diagnosed with HIV positive, but we want to make sure it wasn't a false positive. Can you, so at the time, everybody was testing with aliases. Nobody was testing with their real name. So we took my middle name, which is Michael, and we took David's middle name, which I can't remember now, but we made that my name. And even though it was a skin doctor office, Arnold offered me to come into his office to test again. So he tested me and I came back positive again. But I'll never forget that when David was talking to Arnold on the phone, that's when David broke down and started crying about my HIV uh, diagnosis. And that just made my heart kind of swell. I just realized that he loved me.
Having a moment when you realize how much somebody else cares about you just as a human being
Yeah.
is it not everybody realizes when it happens, but when it does, it hits you. It's
Yeah. That
Yeah.
was that moment, Jason. That was
Yeah.
that moment for me because when we first started talking, he was so matter of fact about it. In my head, I was thinking, God, he doesn't really give a fuck that I'm telling him that I just tested positive this morning, and like he's just so nonchalant. But then he started telling Arnold Klein on the phone, and he fell apart as he was telling it to him, and that was that moment I needed, you know.
So you probably know this, and if you don't, you're welcome. But what you just described, especially David Geffen, I mean, there aren't a lot of names in the history of Hollywood as big as David Geffen. And most of the bands that I listened to in the 80s wouldn't have been who they are without David Geffen. He like
Hmm.
discovered them, right? And then movies and
Hmm.
animation, all these things, right? So I would be willing to wager that 99.9% of the people who met David Geffen after he became David Geffen, the first thing that popped into their head is, what can this man do for me?
Hmm.
I have dreams that this man could possibly make come true, but not you. So if I take that math, 99.9%, which obviously is scientific, that leaves 0.1% of people would be able to see him as a human, get to know him, go to his parties that were full of dignitaries, celebrities, people of mythic proportion, and not ask anything of them. Wax philosophical, be a schmuck, have a good time.
Right.
So I would say that your genius, one degree of your brilliance
Hmm.
that has gotten you to where you are in life is your ability to be interested in people, not to be a collector of what this person can do for me, but to say, this is so interesting. My life is richer because this person's in my life. What
Right.
what else can I learn about them? Would you say that's true?
Absolutely, I would say that's true. I've actually always been a humanist rather than an opportunist. Yes.
Yeah. And do you think that's why you have become such a successful uh, talent representative? Because, well, tell me, why have you become such a successful
Um,
talent representative?
because I mean, I'm not, I don't represent talent, in spite of the talent. I represent talent because I'm passionate about the talent. I really care about their careers. I care about the other aspects of their careers. I'm excited for their wins. I'm dying to see their new projects. I really, I care about whether they're approaching something the wrong way or the right way. I've managed to attract a team that actually feels the same way, that really, like gets up in the morning and cares about these people and really wants to help. And I even, in the time that I'm not making money doing that with my clients, I try to put messages out on social media. I even have a social media agency that I commission to on a monthly basis to help me with my messages on social media, to try and put messages out to actors and performers and people in the entertainment business, that hopefully I can help them with all of this information that I've been blessed to gather, and that they can do something with that information, and hopefully it helps them somehow, you know, in this very complicated path. I really just, for me, um, it's all about giving. It's like, this very famous manager the other day was talking to me about, he had this sort of, saying that he made up, and it was something about, and the evidence he said, I can't remember the saying now, but the end of it was, and the evidence of the win is the money. And I said to him, well, for me, the evidence of the win is the kindness. It's about kindness for me. It's just about kindness. And the kindness has a byproduct of money. But I'm like, that's me. And I know that sounds really corny, but,
I don't think it
you
sounds
know,
corny at all.
yeah.
I don't think it sounds corny at all.
That's where I found my way towards that. And I realized that, you know, um, that greed is the demise of this, the human condition. So, kindness is the antidote. So, you know, I'm all about the human condition. I love helping people get to their place, find their joy, find their bliss.
So imagine that I have the intelligence and the knowledge of a kindergartner. Okay. I know,
Mhm.
hard to do, hard to do. Um, Explain to me, as you would to a kindergartner, what does an agent do and how do you do it?
Um, an agent, an agent helps an entertainer find work. An agent is the person that goes out into the entertainment industry and helps artists find opportunities to make money with their art, with their work.
So why can't the artists do that themselves?
They can, they can, but artists, for the most part, are not super knowledgeable about the business side of selling their art. And so therefore, if they find themselves in situations that are a bit over their head, if they can't really, negotiate things or really understand, if they're not looking for certain things or they're not aware of certain key points and whatnot, I mean, they can find themselves in really situations that can be overwhelming, or they can find themselves in situations that are a bit awkward because they're trying to, ask for money for themselves. And that can be a bit awkward when they're, trying to stay in the good graces of the very same people that they're trying to ask for good, money from. So, you know, uh, so it's better to have a middleman, someone that is the bad guy to ask for money for them, and to ask for the best conditions for them. So that's how I would explain it, I guess, to a kindergartner. Um,
So,
yeah,
it's almost like being a real estate agent. Like, you, if I want to buy a
yeah,
house,
hmm
I know how much money the house costs
hmm
and I know
yeah,
all this,
yeah,
but I don't know all the intricate details and all the
right,
things that have to happen in order to buy and sell a house, which I probably should know. I'd probably
right,
save a lot of money if I did.
right.
Um, so what do you do? So I met you. Do you remember how I met you?
Do I remember how
Because I remember
how?
it vividly.
Oh God, tell me, remind me.
So you were at what agency was it? Was it
Buckwald,
Buckwald? You were at
Buckwald.
Buckwald,
Yeah,
and you had brought Grace on,
yeah,
and Grace was with you for a little while, and I knew a bunch of agents at Buckwald because a number of actors who I coached had represented Buckwald. So Grace had to go see you, and I said, "Oh, I'll come because I'll see some of my friends who work there." And so I go up, and there you were in your office, slick Rick Ferrari, and you said to me the thing that, and I wasn't really acting anymore, but I was if I needed to. You said to me the thing that every actor wants to hear, that they dream of hearing. I walk in there with Grace, and usually when I walk somewhere with Grace, no one's looking at me. I mean, we can both agree on that, right? Like, no one's looking at me
yeah. No,
if I walk
exactly.
in with Grace,
Grace,
you know?
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Grace is definitely getting all the attention for sure.
So, so Rick Ferrari, head of commercials for Buckwald,
Yeah,
one of the best
yeah,
mid-sized agencies in the
yeah.
world, looks at me and says, "Do you have representation?" And I said, "I do. I'm actually with this place." And you said to
Yeah.
me, "Want to come over here? Are you happy with them? You want to come over
Yeah.
here?" And it's like, had I been 21 years old, fresh to New York,
Uh-huh.
I that would have been the greatest moment of my life, right?
Yeah.
And you made me feel within 5 minutes seen, valued,
Mhm.
uh, that I was a because we were just talking. You didn't even know I was an
Mhm.
actor,
Right,
and
right.
oh man, you made me feel great. And I held out for a bit, but then
Yeah.
Grace and I booked a commercial together, and my
Yeah.
agent didn't do anything about it. And I said, "Well, forget this person. I went to you."
Yeah. Yeah. That's hilarious.
Yeah,
Now I remember it vividly. I remember
yeah,
it perfectly.
yeah,
Yes. Yes. Well,
yeah.
I mean, that's me. I'm very passionate and I'm also very impulsive. So,
Yeah.
and
Well, you,
I
you
stand
see,
by that.
but you also see things, and this is another brilliance, genius thing that you have. There's, in my experience, and you tell me if I'm wrong from your experience. From my experience, if you look at Hollywood or Broadway, and this expands out to the corporate world across borders, there's usually an image people have in their mind of this is what this type of person needs to look like. So if I'm looking for a leading man or a leading woman, they need to fall into this category. If I'm looking for a commercial actor who's going to be like a character actor, they need to fall into this category. Now, this happens in business. A leader of a Fortune 500 company has to embody these characteristics. But wait, if you're a tech person, you need to have these characteristics. If you're in marketing, if you're in sales, these are the characteristics. You don't see that way.
Right.
You see someone, I think, and you tell me if I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You see someone and you say, wow, here's my first impression. That's probably 0.0001% of who this person is. Let me talk to them, ask them questions, and see if my curiosity is piqued even further. And if it is, I can sell this person. Like, not
Yeah.
just sell them because they're a commodity, but like this person has value. People need to know who this person is.
That's 100% right. That's
How
100%
do you do that? Because nobody does that. That's not easy to do. How do you do that?
It's an instinct. It's just an instinct. I mean, it comes from really being super interested in people. I started drawing faces because I was fascinated by the human face when I was as young as 4 years old. And I became really good at drawing faces. Like I could do a face that looked like a photograph by the time I was 12.
Really?
Yeah.
You know, I have this theory that there's only 8 faces and just like variations of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because you see it. So you're from New York. We went to the Yankee game last night in
Yeah,
Anaheim.
yeah.
And
Oh, fun.
oh my,
How
dude,
was it?
I mean, it was 3-0 in the bottom of the ninth. They put in their terrible closer. First batter hits a home run. I'm like, what is going on here? So the Yankees won, thank goodness, but 3-2. I'm like, what is going on here?
Wow.
Judge only
The
had
nail
one hit,
biter.
but he's still batting like 385. So anyway,
That's a nail biter.
but
Oh, God.
but it's a good game. But so I'm sitting next to a guy at the stadium who's got a square jaw. He's kind of tall. He's the guy that wears a certain type of glasses with a hat with a flat brim, wears cargo shorts, socks pulled up to the calf with chucks, and wears a tight black t-shirt under a polo shirt. And every guy I've ever met who has that facial structure wears that uniform.
Isn't that
And
funny?
it's like, there are certain faces that it's like, that's how that person presents, you know?
Yeah. But yet, it's so funny. But yet, what's so cool is that we each have an individual expression of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We each have our own individual, like no one else. You know, we have an individual way of expressing it, which is what is so fascinating to me that, you know, I would sit there and draw like as young as 11, 12, 13, 14. Until I got the essence of that person right. If it, you know, if it looked like someone else for a second, I would work on the mouth, I'd work on the eye until it captured the essence. You know what I mean?
Do you still
Yeah.
draw? Do you still paint?
Once in a while, like I've been toying around with this. I'll show you just because.
So once in a while, yet you have your sketchbook right next to you.
Well, no, because see if you can figure out who these ladies are. Like,
Oh my
here.
gosh, that's fantastic. The Golden Girls. I love it.
Yeah.
The Golden Girls who were like basically my age when they shot that show.
Exactly. Yeah, right? No, they were a little older. They said they were younger.
One, I think the oldest one was 62.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. But yeah.
That was great.
I play around sometimes. That's just me goofing, you know, just to you know, release that. I went to the High School of Art and Design. I wanted to just draw my way through high school, you know. I did. I was like, but dude, I mean, I kind of like the fact that the episode was mainly about like my bullshit. You know what I mean? I think that, did you plan it?
No, I don't plan anything.
Okay.
Nothing is planned.
It was like, you know, I mean, I think, I hope this helps people because there's a lot of people that walk around with like a lie that they sort of cornered themselves into. And, whether it was, like you said, the school they went to or a job they held, or,
Yeah.
whatever, they came from money or they came from this, or, whatever the fuck their lie is. And you gotta, you gotta understand that, whatever young version of yourself created that lie is not the same version of yourself that you grow up into, and like, you have to forgive yourself, and you have to like understand that you were struggling through a moment in your life where you felt inferior, and you felt like you needed to make yourself bigger than you were somehow, and you needed to impress people. And we all have a version of that, so we all understand it. So anybody that doesn't want to forgive you for that is someone that is still stuck in the humiliation, the
Yep.
embarrassment of their own lie.
Yeah.
And
It's like,
they can't believe that you're coming out of the closet with that.
yeah.
They can't believe it, so they don't want to forgive you.
Well, the people who want to create and foster the most stringent of laws in the land are the ones who are most guilty of violating those laws. Uh,
100%.
and I mean, it always comes out. So let me ask you this as we wind down. Uh, if you take everything that you've learned from your journey to where you are now, and someone was going to ask you to do a commencement speech, this question is just coming to me off the top of my head. Someone was to ask you to do a commencement speech, and you were to give just 3 pieces of wisdom to people who haven't been jaded yet. They haven't made their decisions yet. And that could be something of, hey, here's something that you might want to do that transcends businesses, or here's something you might want to avoid doing because at the end of the day, you're going to look back at that and you're always going to regret you did it. Can you think of 3 things that you think would be universal for people that would probably help them
Um,
on their way?
mm, well, I would say, yeah, I guess, well, let's see. I would first of all say, avoid spending a lot of time with people that complain a lot, that complain and gossip, and that are always talking negatively about other people, or always complaining that they're never getting their shot, or that somehow things are not working out for them, that the world is against them and they didn't get their shot. They're usually the same people that are talking shit about everybody else, and tearing people down and gossiping about other people. Those are dangerous people to spend your time with. Gravitate towards the people who are the winners, the people who are, MacGyvering their way through life, and they're always finding a way to, make that project happen, or, they're making things happen. They're not worried about talking bad about other people. They're just really, uh, they're making a lot of shit happen. Those are the people you want to gravitate towards. The winners, the people that are always on the move, always making something of their life. Those are the people you want to hang out with and spend your time with. Those are the winners. And try to be as honest as possible. I know sometimes it feels impossible. Sometimes you really feel like, the honest answer is going to hurt you, but it's not. Telling the truth always guides you towards your goal a lot faster. By lying, you take a really long detour around. You've got to trust that. You've got to trust you have an internal guidance system, and your internal guidance system is always working for you. So if it puts you in a space where you're confronted and you have to tell the truth, tell the truth. Trust that situation. It'll get you to your goal faster somehow. It has a really cool plan in place, and it'll get you to your goal. Um, and lastly, I would say, be kind, be kind, be kind, be kind, even if you're in a bad mood. And especially if someone is not kind to you. It's so easy to be kind to those who are kind to you. That's a no brainer. The really hard part is to be kind to someone who you think is not being kind to you. Sometimes it's our perception. Sometimes that person is just in a lot of pain because they've just been left by their lover, or they just lost their job, or something happened to them that has them really hostile. And you're interpreting that as them being unkind to you. Um, Try to just be kind in every instance, even especially when someone else is lashing out at you and being a dick.
Yeah.
Just be kind as often as possible. So those would be my three pieces of advice.
Well, that's where you are. That's why you are where you are. So I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna leave it at this. I'm gonna tell you something that's gonna make you turn red and embarrass you, but I don't care.
Oh shit.
Um, my dear friend Dan DeSantis, who is immensely responsible for JWC becoming what it has become. He's a friend. He's a client. He's a mensch. A couple years ago, his son, who was in college, was coming out to LA to do a summer internship. And he didn't, and he had to ship his car out here. And so Dan, who had plenty of business colleagues in Los Angeles, called me and said, "Hey, would you take the car? Like, can it come to your house? And then Noah, his son, can come pick it up." I said, "Of course." Didn't even think twice. Held onto the car. His son comes. I never met him before. I take him in the backyard. We have a beer, show him like my forging equipment, stuff like that. And then, I think 2 weeks later, I took him to some festival. He had a great time. And Dan said to me, Jason, the greatest thing a person can do is do well by your children. He goes, and you took care of my son, and it was the greatest thing. And he was so touched by that. To me, I was like, well, of course I'm going to do that. I trust with my two children. Rick Ferrari represents my two children. And Grace and I are both entertainment professionals who have kept our children out of entertainment because we know it can be fraught with dangers. And we trust our children with you, nobody else. And that should tell you everything you need to know about how we feel about you, because believe it or not, our children are kind of important to us. And we trust them with you and Alex. And
wow, that's so
that's
beautiful.
not nothing. That's
No,
not
man,
nothing.
that's what a beautiful statement. I can't tell you what that means to me. That's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, Rick, this could have been a 5-hour conversation because
Oh man,
there are a lot of other stories I'd like to hear, but that
you're
might have to be
so
on.
wheezy. You're so wonderful to talk to. You really are. You
I
really
may
are.
have to do a Making Business Personal after dark, and we can
Okay.
have
Yeah,
some great conversations.
for
Thank
sure.
you
For sure.
so much for doing this. I know
No,
how busy
thank
you are,
you. Thank you. Thank you.
and we'll find time to head up to West Hollywood for a nice dinner.
Yes, I'd love that.
All right. Take it easy, Rick. Good to see you. So that was Rick Ferrari. Incredible. Since we did that interview, Rick and I have spoken, and we're going to do more. He's got more stories to tell. He's got a lot of stuff that he wants to impart to people. I mean, we're going to talk more about the entertainment business, about what that really is. How do you get into it? How do you do that? But also some of the stories that he has going back decades. Rick is just such a genuine guy who's lived a life. I mean, you heard it. He's lived a life. And with that lived life comes wisdom. And he's a wise man. He really is, a guy who was a massive party guy back in the 80s, who now is just full of wisdom and in many ways is a shepherd, because actors and musicians and models, many of them, they don't really understand or conceptualize what it takes to be successful in that business, because they're artists and they focus on their art. And there's always been a separation between art and commerce. It's a fine line, right? I mean, Andy Warhol, he got it. He understood it. But a lot of artists don't understand commerce. They don't understand business. Hell, a lot of people in business don't understand business. So people like Rick, who can help shepherd people into this industry, be advocates for them, help them get established, help support their careers as they move forward. And then once they get started, help bolster those careers and move them in great directions. People like Rick are gems, because there's a lot of people in the entertainment business who are out for themselves, and they see artists as easy prey. Here's an easy way to make a buck off somebody without me doing anything. Rick's one of the good guys. And there's a lot of good guys out there. I don't want to make you think that the entertainment business is full of predators and vultures and hyenas. It's not. There's some great people out there, women and men who want to do everything they can to support people's careers. But, you know, there's also the pitfalls. There's the danger. But amongst the good guys, Rick stands head and shoulders above them. So I hope you enjoyed that episode. Thank you again for joining us on Making Business Personal. And if you liked this episode, please show it. Okay, go ahead and put a heart on it. Go ahead and like it, share it, write some comments, write to me. The more you talk about this, the more other people hear it. Okay, so I might have built something here, but just because I built it doesn't mean that people are going to come. They're going to come because you tell them. So you are my biggest advocates. Thank you so much for listening as always, and I'll see you next time at Making Business Personal.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe for more insights and share it with a friend if you think they could benefit too. This is Jason Weiss reminding you that it's not business, it's personal.